Evil is not always loud, obvious, or easy to spot, because the truth is most destructive people are not the ones who walk into your life wearing a clear mask of hate or violence. They are the ones who slip in quietly with charm, warmth, and even kindness, and that is why they are so dangerous. Because you let your guard down when someone smiles at you, when they show you a little attention, when they appear supportive, you assume their intentions match their surface behavior. But that is exactly the trap. The subtle types of evil people understand human psychology. They know we crave connection. They know we want to believe in goodness, and they exploit that natural instinct to disarm us. They build trust not because they care, but because trust gives them access, and access is power. And once they have power, they start to shape your reality in small, quiet, corrosive ways, so slow that you don't notice the shift until you are already compromised. Think about how people often describe toxic encounters after the fact. They say things like, "I never saw it coming," or "They seemed so nice at first," or "I thought they were different." And that is exactly the pattern. The subtle evil rarely begins with aggression. They begin with charm. They know if they attack too soon you will resist, so they lure you in by becoming what you want to see. They mimic empathy. They echo your values. They mirror your behaviors. They give just enough of themselves to seem trustworthy, and in doing so, they lower your defenses, because your brain is wired to respond positively to mirroring, to shared values, to belonging. So what feels like connection is often manipulation in disguise. This is why it is so important to sharpen your ability to see beyond the mask, because the mask will always be there, and the mask is rarely ugly. It is usually beautiful, enticing, appealing, and even comforting, and that is why people fall into the same traps over and over, because they confuse appearance with reality. They confuse politeness with respect. They confuse charm with character. But if you want to protect yourself, you must learn to separate words from actions. You must watch for patterns, not promises. You must observe consistency, not charm. Because evil can mimic goodness for a while, but it cannot sustain it indefinitely. Eventually the cracks show, but only if you are paying attention. The subtle danger of disguised evil is not just in what it does to you externally, but in what it does to you internally. Because when someone cloaked in kindness betrays you, it makes you question yourself. You start to wonder if you missed the signs, if you overreacted, if you imagined the manipulation. And that self-doubt is exactly what they count on. Because the longer you are unsure of your own perception, the longer they maintain control. And once doubt has been planted, they no longer need to control the situation. They only need to control your confidence in your judgment. And when you lose that, they can do almost anything. And you will rationalize it, excuse it, or overlook it. The solution is not to become cynical or distrustful of everyone. It is to become discerning. It is to recognize that real character does not need a mask. Real integrity does not require charm. Real goodness does not manipulate. It does not rush trust. It does not mirror you in order to win you over. It shows up consistently, even when no one is watching. And it does not make you question your worth or your reality. So the real test of people is not how they act when they first enter your life, but how they act when the novelty has worn off, when there is nothing to gain, when pressure rises, when they are not performing. That is when you see what was always underneath. Understand this clearly. The subtle evil relies on your blindness. It relies on your tendency to judge quickly, to equate a smile with kindness, to mistake charisma for integrity. So your greatest defense is awareness. It is the ability to slow down and watch, to not hand over trust just because someone appears trustworthy, but to earn it through consistency and alignment. And that takes patience, and patience is what most people lack, which is why so many fall victim. But when you train yourself to see past appearances, you are no longer an easy target. You become someone who cannot be disarmed by charm, who cannot be lured by flattery, who cannot be deceived by surface performance. At the core of this is your ability to stay grounded in who you are. Because when you know yourself, when you are rooted in your values, when you are confident in your own worth, no disguise can shake you for long. Because even if someone enters your life wearing a mask, you will eventually recognize the mismatch between their words and their energy, between their actions and their promises. And you will not rationalize it away. You will act on it. You will cut ties. You will protect yourself, and that is the essence of true strength, not to avoid all evil but to see it clearly, to call it for what it is, and to refuse to be blinded by the disguise. So remember this, not all danger announces itself with threats or aggression. Some of the most destructive forces you will ever face are the ones that come dressed in kindness, disguised as opportunity, wrapped in charm. But once you understand that, once you train your eyes to see beyond the surface, you cannot be fooled. Because you know that real character needs no disguise, and real power never hides behind a mask. One of the most dangerous kinds of people you will ever encounter are manipulators, because unlike someone who openly opposes you or shows you hostility, a manipulator operates in the shadows. They pull strings without you noticing, they shape your decisions without you realizing. They bend your emotions to their will without ever raising their voice. And that makes them far more effective and far more dangerous. Manipulation is not always a grand scheme. Sometimes it is as simple as a guilt trip, a subtle withdrawal of affection, a calculated silence, or a strategic compliment at the right moment. These are not random acts. They are intentional tactics designed to control you while making you feel as if you still have control, and that illusion is what keeps people trapped in manipulative relationships. Because when you think you are making choices freely, you do not notice that your choices have already been influenced. What makes manipulators especially insidious is that they know how to weaponize your best qualities against you. They study what drives you. They identify your values, and then they exploit them. If you are kind, they guilt you into doing more than you should. If you are loyal, they pressure you into tolerating more than you deserve. If you are ambitious, they dangle opportunities just out of reach to keep you chasing their approval. They take the very things that make you strong and turn them into vulnerabilities. And because it comes disguised as connection or care, you rarely see it for what it is. You just feel exhausted, drained, or confused, wondering why you give so much and still feel small. Manipulators are not always obvious villains. Many of them present themselves as supportive, generous, or protective. They create a dynamic where you feel indebted to them, as though you owe them for their kindness or for their guidance. But what they are really doing is building leverage, because every favor, every act of generosity, every moment of apparent support comes with invisible strings attached. And the moment you pull away, those strings tighten. You are reminded of everything they have done for you, and you are made to feel guilty for stepping back. That is not generosity. That is debt disguised as kindness. And debt is control. A manipulator's greatest strength lies in their ability to make you question yourself, because if you start to doubt your own judgment, you will stop resisting theirs, and that is when you become easy to control. This is why people under manipulation often say things like, maybe I am overreacting, or maybe it really is my fault, or I don't want to hurt them. They've done so much for me. These are the thoughts that reveal you are no longer thinking freely. You are thinking in the frame they created. And once they have built that frame, you live inside their version of reality where they are always right, and you are always indebted, wrong, or too weak to leave. The way to disarm a manipulator is not by confronting them with anger or by trying to outplay their tactics. Because if you do, you are still inside their game. You are still reacting to the frame they built. Instead, the real power lies in awareness. It lies in your ability to step outside the narrative they are spinning, to see their tactics for what they are, to recognize the guilt trip as a tool, not a truth, to recognize the silent treatment as manipulation, not reflection, to recognize the top kindness as leverage, not love. Because once you see the play, it no longer has power. Their tools lose their edge. When you name them, the challenge is that manipulators count on you not wanting to be the bad person. They know you want to be kind. You want to be loyal. You want to be fair. And so they twist those values until you feel like protecting yourself means betraying them. But here is the truth. Protecting yourself is not betrayal. Saying no is not cruelty. Setting boundaries is not selfish. Those are acts of strength. And when you realize that, you take back the power they tried to take from you. You stop being a pawn in their game, and you start being the master of your own choices. To protect yourself from manipulators, you must build a strong sense of internal clarity. You must know what you value, what your limits are, and what you will not compromise, because if you do not define those things for yourself, someone else will define them for you, and once you have clarity, you will not be as easily swayed by emotional tactics. You will not mistake guilt for love, or pressure for loyalty, or control for protection. You will be able to see manipulation in its true form, stripped of its disguise, and you will walk away not with doubt but with confidence. Remember this: manipulators succeed, not because they are stronger than you, but because they make you believe you are weaker than you are. They succeed not because they control your life, but because they make you doubt your ability to live it on your own. Once you break that illusion, they lose their grip, and you gain freedom. So the most important skill you can develop is not to please others, not to avoid conflict, but to recognize when someone is bending your will, and to have the courage to step out of their game entirely. Because the moment you stop playing, the manipulator has no power, their strings fall loose, and you walk away untangled, free, and in full control of yourself again. Another subtle but extremely dangerous type of person you need to recognize and never underestimate is the envious one. Envy is not just simple jealousy. It is deeper, darker, and far more destructive. Jealousy is when someone wants what you have. Envy is when someone cannot stand to see you with it. Jealousy might say, "I wish I had that too." Envy says, "I don't want you to have it at all." This difference is critical because while jealousy might drive someone to improve themselves, envy drives someone to sabotage you. They do not want to rise to your level. They want to pull you down to theirs. And this is why envy is so dangerous. It is not about growth. It is about destruction. Envious people are often difficult to detect because they rarely admit to what they feel. Instead, they hide it behind smiles, politeness, or even false encouragement. They may congratulate you in public, but in private, they whisper doubts into your ear. They may clap for you when others are watching, but behind your back, they quietly spread rumors, twist stories, or minimize your accomplishments. Envy is not always loud. It is subtle. It is disguised as harmless comments, backhanded compliments, or jokes that cut a little too deep. "Oh, you're doing well, but you just got lucky." Or, "That's great, but let's see how long it lasts." These are not innocent remarks. They are seeds planted to weaken your confidence. Because an envious person cannot celebrate your growth without resenting it. The danger of envy is not just in what people say, but in how they act. An envious person will often position themselves close to you, because the closer they are, the more access they have to your wins and your weaknesses. They might pretend to be your friend, your supporter, or even your confidant. But while they are standing beside you, they are also watching for an opening, waiting for a chance to undermine you. Envy is strategic, it is patient, and it is relentless. And if you do not recognize it early, you may find yourself blindsided by betrayal you never saw coming. One of the clearest signs of envy is the inability of a person to genuinely celebrate your success. Pay attention to how people react when you win, because envy always shows itself in moments of your achievement. Someone who truly supports you will not feel threatened by your progress. They will cheer without hesitation. But someone envious will struggle. Their smile will be forced. Their praise will be thin. And they will often shift the conversation back to themselves or to someone else's achievements. Anything to dim your light so they do not have to feel small in its glow. And the more you succeed, the harder it becomes for them to hide it, because envy feeds on comparison, and every win of yours feels to them like a personal loss. What makes envy especially dangerous is how it erodes relationships from the inside. You might keep giving, keep sharing, keep trusting, while they keep secretly resenting. You may think you are building a bond, but they are building a case against you in their mind. Every success you have becomes another reason for them to dislike you. Even if they never admit it, you will feel it in the little digs, the subtle dismissals, the quiet withdrawal of support when you need it most. Envy is corrosive, and if you allow it close to you, it will drain you slowly, piece by piece, until you start questioning whether your success is worth the constant pushback. The key to handling envy is to never fuel it with unnecessary access. You do not need to share every detail of your life, every plan, or every achievement with people who cannot celebrate you. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your journey. And sometimes the best protection is silence, not secrecy, but discretion, because the less they know, the less they can use against you. You do not owe your light to people who only want to dim it. And you do not need their applause to validate your progress. Your achievements speak for themselves. You do not need to explain or justify them to anyone. Do not fall into the trap of trying to win over an envious person, because you never will. Envy is not about what you have done wrong. It is about their inability to handle your right. No amount of kindness, humility, or generosity will erase their resentment. In fact, sometimes your kindness only makes their envy worse, because it reminds them not only of what you have, but of who you are, and that is something they cannot steal or replicate. Envy is not cured by love. It is not softened by patience. It is only managed by boundaries, distance, and clarity about who deserves your energy. You must remember that envy is never about you. It is always about them, their insecurities, their lack of self-belief, their inability to build for themselves, their fear of being left behind. And once you understand that, you stop internalizing their negativity. You stop shrinking yourself to make them comfortable. You stop apologizing for your wins, and you start living fully without guilt or hesitation, because your success is not a crime, your growth is not an offense, and your light is not something to be hidden just because it makes someone else uncomfortable. So protect your energy, protect your peace, and protect your progress. Because envious people will always exist. They will always lurk in the corners of your life, waiting to see if you will stumble. But the real victory is not in proving them wrong. It is in continuing to rise despite them, in shining so brightly that their shadows cannot touch you, and in building a life so strong that their whispers, doubts, and resentment dissolve into nothing. Envy cannot stop you unless you let it, and when you choose to see it clearly and guard yourself wisely, you rise above it. Every time another subtle type of person you must never overlook is the manipulator, because manipulation is not always obvious. It is not always loud, and it is not always aggressive. In fact, most manipulators operate in silence, in subtlety, and in the small ways they chip away at your clarity and control. Manipulation is an art of influence without transparency. It is the way someone guides you into decisions, actions, or feelings that benefit them while convincing you that those choices were your own. This is why manipulation is so dangerous, because when it is happening, you often cannot see it. And by the time you recognize it, damage has already been done. A manipulator knows exactly how to study people. They read emotions, patterns, and vulnerabilities like a book, and they use this knowledge not to connect with you, but to control you. They watch how you respond to praise, so they use flattery to soften your defenses. They notice when you crave approval, so they dangle it in front of you like a reward. They observe when you fear rejection, so they withhold attention until you comply. Their power lies in twisting your psychology against you, in turning your own emotions into levers they can pull. And because it feels like you are the one making choices, you do not notice the strings attached until you are tangled in them. Manipulators are not always cruel on the surface. In fact, many appear kind, helpful, and even generous, and that is what makes them so dangerous, because kindness becomes a mask, generosity becomes a tool, and helpfulness becomes a trap. They do not give without expecting something back. They do not support without a hidden motive, and they do not listen without storing away what you share to use it later. A manipulator will often disguise control as care. They will say they are protecting you, advising you, or guiding you, but in reality they are slowly directing you toward choices that serve them, not you. One of the clearest signs you are dealing with manipulation is when you feel confused, guilty, or obligated after an interaction. Healthy relationships leave you feeling supported and strong. Manipulative relationships leave you feeling drained, second-guessing, or indebted, and this is intentional. Manipulators thrive on creating imbalance. They want you to feel like you owe them, like you are not enough without them, or like walking away would make you the villain. This is how they keep control, not by force but by emotional entanglement, by making you doubt your own strength and rely on theirs. Another tactic manipulators use is selective truth. They will never lie outright in a way that is easy to catch. Instead, they will distort facts, withhold information, or present things in a way that benefits their agenda. And because nothing is technically false, you cannot call it out easily. This creates a fog of half-truths where you begin to lose trust in your own judgment. And once you lose that trust, you begin leaning on theirs, which is exactly what they want. Manipulation thrives in confusion, because when you are not sure of the ground beneath your feet, you will grab onto the hand that offers stability, even if it is the same hand pushing you off balance. The most dangerous manipulators are the ones who operate in close proximity, friends, partners, family, or colleagues. Because trust is the soil in which manipulation grows fastest. The more you trust, the more you open up, and the more they can use your words, fears, and dreams against you. Manipulation is rarely random. It is calculated, and the closer someone is, the more material they have to work with. This is why it hurts so deeply when you realize you have been manipulated, because it is not just about control. It is about betrayal. It is about realizing that what looked like support was actually exploitation. The only way to protect yourself from manipulators is to master awareness and boundaries. You must learn to pay attention not just to what people say, but to how you feel after they say it. Your emotions are data. If someone constantly leaves you feeling confused, guilty, or indebted, that is not care. That is control. You must also learn to hold your boundaries with strength. Manipulators push to see how far they can go, and once they know you will bend, they never stop bending you further. Your strength is in saying no without apology, in refusing to explain yourself beyond what is necessary, and in keeping your life choices rooted in your own values, not in someone else's expectations. It is also crucial to remember that manipulators rely on silence. As long as you do not call out the patterns, they continue. But when you name them, when you expose the tactic, the power shifts. A manipulator thrives in shadows but weakens in light. When you say, "I notice you only bring this up when you want something," or "It feels like I always owe you but never the other way around," you disrupt their control. Because now they know you are watching. Now they know their mask is slipping, and once the mask slips, it is hard for them to regain that same hold. Do not make the mistake of thinking you can change a manipulator. Manipulation is not a phase. It is a strategy. It is how they navigate the world. And while people can change if they choose to, most manipulators do not, because the strategy works too well for them. Your responsibility is not to fix them. Your responsibility is to protect yourself, to guard your energy, and to ensure that your decisions are driven by clarity, not by coercion. Because the cost of allowing manipulation to continue is too high. It drains your confidence, your peace, and your independence. And once those are gone, reclaiming them is far harder. So stay alert, stay strong, and trust your intuition. Because manipulation is only effective when you ignore the signals your own spirit is sending. When you learn to listen, when you learn to draw lines, and when you learn to call patterns by their name, you become untouchable. Manipulators lose their grip, and you take back the power they tried to steal. That is how you rise above their games, not by playing them, but by refusing to be played. Another type of subtle evil that often goes unnoticed is the opportunist, the kind of person who does not show their intentions openly, but is always scanning the environment for ways to benefit themselves. They do not care who gets hurt in the process, as long as they move one step forward. These are people who watch closely, who listen carefully, and who wait patiently for the right moment to strike. And when the chance appears, they step in, not with gratitude, not with loyalty, but with the sole purpose of extracting value from you, from your work, from your effort, or from your vulnerability. Opportunists thrive in every environment because they are masters at camouflage. They pretend to be your ally, your friend, or even your supporter. But underneath that mask is a mind constantly calculating what they can gain and how quickly they can take it. Opportunists often present themselves as harmless. They smile, they agree, they praise, and in doing so, they lower your guard. They want you to believe they are on your side. But the truth is, they are simply waiting, studying, and preparing. They rarely confront directly because they know patience pays more than aggression. They wait for you to reveal too much, to slip, to show a weakness. And once you do, they step in swiftly and without hesitation. And the moment they get what they want, you will see their true colors because they disappear, they withdraw, or they turn cold. The opportunist's loyalty lasts only as long as the benefits last. And the second those benefits fade, so do they. The danger of opportunists is not just what they take, but what they destroy. They have a way of making you doubt yourself, because when you look back at their behavior, you realize all the red flags were there. The forced charm, the constant questions, the subtle flattery, but you ignored them because they seemed supportive. And when the mask falls, you are left not only with loss, but with self-blame. You begin to think you should have seen it earlier, that you should have protected yourself better. But opportunists are skilled because they know how to hide in plain sight. They thrive on the fact that most people want to believe in others, most people want to trust, and they exploit that very instinct. Opportunists are also dangerous because they are not always outsiders. Many times, they are people within your circle, the ones who seem closest to you. Colleagues who act like teammates, relatives who claim family loyalty, or friends who pretend they have your back. But their closeness is not about connection, it is about access. The closer they are, the easier it is to see what you have, what you know, or what you can offer. And once they see it, they start strategizing how to take it for themselves. You may think they are helping you, but in reality, they are positioning themselves to step in at the exact moment your effort pays off. They let you do the work, carry the weight, and then swoop in when the results are ready to be claimed. What makes opportunists particularly toxic is the way they rationalize their actions. They do not see themselves as betrayers. They see themselves as smart. They tell themselves that everyone looks out for themselves, that if you let them take advantage of you, it is your fault. They cloak their selfishness in the language of survival. But the truth is, it is not survival, it is exploitation. There is a difference between seizing an opportunity and exploiting another person. One builds, the other corrodes. And opportunists choose corrosion every time because it is easier. It requires no investment, no loyalty, no integrity, only cunning and timing. The best defense against opportunists is awareness and discernment. You cannot stop people from wanting to take, but you can stop them from taking from you. And that begins with watching actions more than words. Opportunists often say all the right things, but their actions reveal them. They are always present when success arrives, but absent during the struggle. They show up when they can collect, but vanish when it is time to contribute. They are quick to remind you of what they have done for you, even if it was small, and quicker to downplay what you have done for them. Because their focus is always one-sided, it is about their gain, not mutual growth. You also protect yourself by controlling access. The opportunist thrives on knowing too much. They use information as a map to your strengths and weaknesses. So be intentional with what you share and with whom you share it. Not everyone deserves to know your plans. Not everyone deserves to be part of your vision. The more you keep your moves discreet, the less chance opportunists have to position themselves against you. And when you do give access, make sure it is earned, not handed out freely. Make people prove loyalty through consistency, not through charm. Boundaries are your shield, because opportunists test limits constantly. They want to see how much they can take before you resist. And if you never resist, they will keep taking. You must draw the line clearly and early. When you say no and mean it, when you refuse to allow small exploitations, you make it harder for opportunists to escalate to bigger ones. Their power thrives on silence and compliance, and the moment you show firmness, their interest often fades, because they prefer easy targets, people who will not question or confront. When they sense strength, they retreat because strength makes their strategy too costly. It is also important to recognize that not every person who seizes an opportunity is an opportunist. There is nothing wrong with ambition, with striving, or with taking chances, but the line is crossed when someone's ambition feeds on another's effort, when someone's rise depends on someone else's downfall. Ambition can be honorable. Opportunism cannot, because opportunism has no foundation in respect. It is rooted only in selfishness, and selfishness at that level is a form of quiet destruction. In the end, the opportunist's greatest weakness is that they cannot build. They can only take, and while they may rise for a moment by standing on someone else's shoulders, they cannot sustain it, because they have no roots, no foundation, no real skill in creating value. Their entire existence is parasitic, and parasites only thrive until the host cuts them off. That is why your responsibility is not to hate them, not to fight them endlessly, but to identify them, protect yourself, and cut them off before they drain you. Because your energy, your effort, and your vision are too valuable to be stolen by someone who never intended to contribute. You are meant to build, not to be used as the building block for someone else's selfish climb. The sixth type of subtle evil person you must never ignore is the manipulator, the kind of individual who thrives on bending reality to serve their own agenda. They do not use force, they do not scream, they do not fight openly. Instead, they twist your emotions, your thoughts, and your perception until you begin to question yourself. Manipulators are dangerous because their weapon is invisible. It is influence, and influence, when corrupted, can be more destructive than any open attack. They plant seeds of doubt inside you. They whisper suggestions that make you second guess your instincts. They redirect blame so cleverly that you begin to think you are the problem, when in truth, it is them all along. Manipulators do not want you to see clearly. They thrive in confusion. They create emotional fog so that you cannot tell where their fault ends and your responsibility begins. If you confront them, they shift the conversation. If you challenge them, they twist your words. If you point out their wrongs, they make you feel guilty for even noticing. Over time, this begins to wear you down, because you are not only dealing with the issue itself, you are dealing with the constant internal battle of questioning your own judgment. And once you start doubting yourself, manipulators gain control. They know the moment you rely on their version of reality over your own, you are no longer free. What makes manipulators so destructive is their ability to disguise their intentions. They often come across as helpful, supportive, even self-sacrificing. They make you feel indebted to them, as if you owe them something. They wrap their manipulation in kindness or love, which makes it harder to recognize. You tell yourself they mean well. You convince yourself they are just misunderstood. And that is exactly what they want. They want you to rationalize their behavior, to excuse it, because as long as you are making excuses for them, you will not hold them accountable. And when you do not hold them accountable, they win. One of the most common tactics manipulators use is guilt. They weaponize your empathy. They make you feel bad for standing up for yourself. They remind you of what they have done for you, even if it was small or insignificant. They say things like, "After all I've done for you," or "I thought you cared about me." They twist your kindness into a chain. And once you are bound by guilt, you stop resisting. Another tactic they use is playing the victim. Manipulators are experts at flipping the script. When you point out their wrong, suddenly they are the one who is hurt. Suddenly they are the one suffering, and you are left apologizing for something they did. What makes them so skilled is their ability to study people. Manipulators know how to find your emotional triggers. They know what makes you angry, what makes you insecure, what makes you want to please. And once they know, they use it against you. They push the exact buttons that will get you to react the way they want. If they need you to feel weak, they point out your flaws. If they need you to feel guilty, they exaggerate their sacrifices. If they need you to feel responsible, they act helpless. Everything they do is calculated, and it is all about control. The most dangerous manipulators are the ones closest to you, because they have access to your vulnerabilities. They know your fears, your insecurities, and your desires. Family members, friends, or partners who manipulate are especially difficult to confront because you feel tied to them emotionally. You do not want to hurt them. You do not want to lose them. But this is exactly why they succeed. They exploit the bond you have with them. They take advantage of the trust you give, and they use it to twist situations in their favor. What you must understand is that real love, real friendship, real loyalty does not require manipulation. It does not need tricks or guilt to survive. Manipulation is not care. It is control dressed as care. To protect yourself from manipulators, the first step is clarity. You must learn to separate your feelings from their influence. Ask yourself, do I feel guilty because I truly did wrong, or because they want me to feel guilty? Do I feel confused because I lack understanding, or because they are intentionally twisting the truth? Clarity gives you back your power, because once you see their tactics for what they are, they begin to lose their hold. Manipulators thrive in darkness, and the moment you shine light on their games, the illusions begin to break. The second defense is boundaries. Manipulators hate boundaries because boundaries expose their lack of control. When you say no and stand by it, when you refuse to be guilt-tripped, when you call out twisting of facts, you shatter the illusion they have built. They may push harder at first because manipulators do not give up control easily. But if you remain firm, they eventually retreat. They realize they cannot bend you as they once did. And when they cannot bend you, they lose interest, because manipulation only works on those who allow it. Another important step is trusting your instincts again. Manipulators train you to distrust yourself. They want you to lean on them for reality. But your instincts are not broken. They have simply been silenced. You must learn to listen to that inner voice again. The voice that tells you something is off. The voice that feels discomfort even when everything looks fine on the surface. That voice is your warning system. And the more you honor it, the stronger it becomes. Manipulators can trick your mind, but they struggle to silence your gut. And that is why you must give your instincts a place of authority in your life. Remember that manipulators are not strong. They only appear strong because they use deception. Their entire power rests on illusion, and illusion collapses the moment you see the truth. They fear people who are self-aware, people who stand firm, people who cannot be emotionally swayed like a puppet. And the more you develop self-control, emotional discipline, and clarity of thought, the less influence manipulators can ever have over you. The ultimate act of strength is not fighting manipulators endlessly, but refusing to let them control your reality. Once you step out of their web, once you see the strings they try to pull, they no longer have power because their game requires your participation. Without your participation, they cannot win. You reclaim your mind, your emotions, and your choices, and in doing so, you strip them of the very weapon they depended on. Your freedom lies in that moment, the moment you stop dancing to their tune and start moving to your own. Because no manipulator can dominate a mind that chooses to stay clear, strong, and unshaken. The seventh type of subtle evil person you must recognize is the betrayer, the one who wears loyalty on their sleeve, but holds a dagger behind their back. They will stand with you in the light, but plot against you in the shadows. They will celebrate your victories to your face while secretly resenting every step you take forward. Betrayers are not always obvious. In fact, their strength lies in their ability to mask themselves as friends, allies, or even family. They gain your trust, they earn your confidence, they make you feel secure, and just when you least expect it, they turn on you. Their betrayal cuts deeper than any enemy's attack, because it comes from someone you allowed into your inner circle. Betrayers thrive on opportunity. They do not move against you when you are strong and guarded. They wait, they watch, and they strike when you are vulnerable. Perhaps when you are struggling, perhaps when you are distracted, or perhaps when you are celebrating and your guard is down. Their timing is always deliberate. Betrayal is not random. It is calculated. They know when their action will have the most devastating effect, and that is when they deliver their strike. What makes them dangerous is that you rarely see it coming. Because betrayal requires access, and access is something only trust can give, you must understand that betrayal rarely starts big. It begins with small cracks, little actions that seem dismissible. Maybe they share something you told them in confidence. Maybe they minimize your success with backhanded compliments. Maybe they side with others in conversations when they should defend you. These may feel minor at first, but they are signals. They are testing the limits of what they can get away with. And if you ignore them, the cracks widen until one day it becomes a full collapse. Betrayal is almost always preceded by warning signs, but many choose not to see them because the thought of someone close turning against us is painful to accept. What drives a betrayer can vary. Sometimes it is envy. They cannot stand to see you rise higher than them. Sometimes it is greed. They see an opportunity to benefit themselves even if it costs you dearly. Sometimes it is fear. They believe standing against you will protect them. And sometimes it is simply selfishness. Their loyalty ends where their self-interest begins. No matter the reason, the root is always the same. A lack of integrity, a lack of honor, a lack of courage to stand true. Betrayal is the ultimate act of cowardice because it pretends to be friendship while acting as an enemy. The damage of betrayal is not only in what the betrayer does, but in the aftermath it leaves. Betrayal shatters trust. It makes you question not just the betrayer but yourself. How did I not see it? How could I have trusted them? What is wrong with my judgment? This self-doubt can be even more crippling than the act itself, because if you start believing you cannot trust your instincts, you build walls around yourself so high that even the people who deserve your trust can never reach you. The betrayer's damage lingers long after their act is done if you allow it to. But here lies the truth. Betrayal says more about the betrayer than it does about you. Their actions reveal their weakness, not yours. Their deception shows their lack of character, not your lack of awareness. And while betrayal may hurt, it also clears your path. It removes from your life someone who was never meant to be there, someone whose loyalty was an illusion. Betrayal exposes what was hidden, and though painful, it gives you clarity. It shows you who truly deserves your trust and who never did. The key to dealing with betrayal is twofold. First, you must accept reality quickly. Do not waste your energy making excuses for someone who has shown you their true colors. Once betrayal is revealed, do not cover it with denial. Denial only prolongs your suffering. See it for what it is, and call it by its name. The second step is to cut off access. The betrayer thrives on closeness. on being near enough to strike. When you take away their access, you take away their power. This does not mean you must carry hatred. It means you must carry wisdom, learn from the betrayal, but do not let it poison you with bitterness. Another crucial lesson is to strengthen your discernment. Pay attention to consistency. True loyalty is not proven when things are easy. It is proven when things are hard. Watch how people act when you fail, when you succeed, when you are absent. A loyal person stands firm in all seasons. A betrayer wavers depending on what benefits them most. Their mask slips in small ways, and the wise learn to notice. The more you sharpen your discernment, the harder it is for a betrayer to hide. The greatest power you have over betrayal is resilience. Yes, it cuts deep. Yes, it shakes you, but it cannot destroy you unless you allow it to. When you rise after betrayal, you become stronger, sharper, wiser, and far more difficult to deceive again. Betrayal does not make you weaker, it makes you tougher. Because once you have been stabbed in the back and survived, you carry a strength that no betrayer can ever take from you. You realize that your worth was never tied to their loyalty, your future was never tied to their presence, and your power was never tied to their approval. Betrayal is one of the most painful forms of evil because it uses closeness as its weapon. But it is also one of the most revealing because it strips away the illusions and forces you to see the truth. Do not let betrayal harden you into distrust of everyone. Let it sharpen you into discernment of the right ones. Because while there will always be betrayers in the world, there will also be people of integrity, of loyalty, of true honor. And when you surround yourself with them, betrayal loses its sting because you no longer fear the knife behind the back. You walk with people who hold you up instead of pulling you down. And that is where true strength lies. The eighth and final type of subtle evil person you must guard against is the manipulator, the one who does not attack you openly, the one who does not even need to betray you directly, but instead twists your mind, bends your emotions, and controls your choices without you realizing it. Manipulators are the most dangerous because they can make you believe you are acting freely when in reality, you are moving according to their design. They feed on influence, they thrive in deception, and they use your own emotions as the chains that keep you bound to their control. Their power is not in force, but in subtle persuasion, not in strength, but in cunning. The manipulator understands human psychology better than most. They know when to flatter and when to criticize, when to play the victim and when to play the authority. They shift depending on what they need from you. They will guilt you into compliance by making you feel selfish if you say no. They will gaslight you into questioning your own memory. They will praise you when it benefits them, only to withhold that praise when they want to make you chase their approval. Everything is calculated, everything is intentional, nothing is accidental, and the more you fall into their game, the harder it becomes to see the invisible strings they have attached to you. Manipulators are skilled at making you second. Guess yourself, their weapon is confusion. If you feel constantly uncertain, constantly doubting whether you are right or wrong, constantly wondering if you are overreacting, that is not an accident, that is their design. They want you to stabilize because clarity is freedom and confusion is control. When you are unsure of yourself, you lean on them for guidance, and in doing so, you hand them more power. They make themselves the center of your compass, the source of your validation, the arbiter of your truth. And once they achieve that, they own you without you even realizing it. What makes the manipulator even more insidious is that they rarely come across as villains. Often, they present themselves as caring, concerned, supportive, even protective. They convince you that their control is for your own good, that they are guiding you, protecting you, teaching you, helping you. They wrap their manipulation in the disguise of love, friendship, or mentorship, and because of this, many people tolerate it far longer than they should, because it feels disloyal to question someone who claims to have your best interest at heart. But true care empowers you. While manipulation weakens you, true love liberates you. While manipulation binds you. The difference is subtle but undeniable when you learn to see it. The danger of manipulation is that it does not just harm your choices in the moment, it can alter your entire sense of self. A skilled manipulator can make you feel smaller than you are, weaker than you are, less capable than you are. They can crush your self-esteem quietly, not through open insults but through consistent doubt. They make you dependent on their approval to feel valuable, and in doing so, they rob you of your independence, your strength, your confidence. You are no longer living for your own vision, but for the approval of someone who secretly benefits from your submission. To break free from manipulators, you must reclaim your clarity. Clarity is the enemy of manipulation. When you are clear about your values, your boundaries, and your truth, their tactics lose their grip. You must ask yourself, does this person empower me or weaken me? Do I feel stronger after being around them, or do I feel drained? Do I trust myself more or less when they are in my life? These questions are crucial because manipulation thrives in blindness. Once you see the game loses its power. Manipulators only win when you remain unaware of their strings. Another critical defense against manipulators is boundaries. Manipulators despise boundaries because boundaries are limits, and limits deny them control. When you begin to say no, when you refuse to explain yourself, when you stop justifying every choice, the manipulator panics because their influence over you starts slipping. At first, they may intensify their efforts. They may guilt you harder, gaslight you stronger, or play victim louder. But if you hold firm, if you do not bend, they eventually realize their control is gone. Manipulators cannot survive where boundaries are strong. They thrive only in environments where people are too afraid to enforce limits. It is also vital to remember that manipulators feed on silence. They thrive when you do not call out their behavior, when you do not question their motives, when you accept their control without challenge. The moment you name their tactic, the illusion begins to crack. Say it out loud. This feels like manipulation. I feel pressured. I feel controlled. I feel like my choices are not my own. By giving language to the manipulation, you shine a light on the shadows where they operate. Manipulators are strongest in secrecy, weakest in exposure. And when you bring their games into the open, their mask begins to fall. Manipulators are one of the most dangerous types of subtle, evil people because they can drain your life without ever raising a hand against you. They can kill your confidence without ever raising their voice. They can enslave you without ever locking a door. But they only succeed if you remain blind. Once you learn to recognize the patterns, once you learn to trust your clarity, once you learn to enforce your boundaries, their power dissolves. They are no longer the puppeteer pulling your strings. They are just another voice you choose not to obey. And in that choice, you reclaim your strength, your freedom, your independence, and no manipulator can take that away from you again.